I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My wife, Emily, always seemed like the kind of woman who had her act together. She was sharp, sharp-tongued even, but I liked that about her. Strong, confident, at least, that's what I thought. We'd been married for about 5 years, and things between us had always been pretty good, or so I believed. We had our disagreements, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. We shared a lot of the same values, or so I thought. Lately, though, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. She was more secretive with her phone, always keeping it close, even when she was in the bathroom or outside. She'd often leave her phone face down, and if I tried to look at it, she'd get defensive, say I was being paranoid. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was just annoyed or stressed about work. She's a lawyer, busy as hell, always busy with some case or another. But then she started canceling plans, saying she had to stay late at the office or had a meeting she couldn't get out of. The excuses didn't add up, especially when her phone lit up at odd hours and she'd quickly hide it or turn away. One night I decided to check her phone when she went to bed. I know, bad move, but I just had a gut feeling. I found a string of texts, nothing explicit at first, just some flirty banter, but enough to make my stomach turn. Then I saw a message from someone named Alex that said, "Can't wait to see you at the safe house tonight. Miss you." My heart stopped. Safe house? What the hell was that? I didn't even know she was involved in anything like that. I kept scrolling and it got worse. There were messages about meeting up during protests I was organizing, about sharing a place just outside the city. It was like she was hiding a secret life. I also found receipts for hotel stays, and there was a picture of her with a guy, both of them smiling in what looked like a motel room, his arm around her waist. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind raced. How long has this been going on? Who is this guy and what were they doing? I felt sick and furious at the same time. I mean, I always knew she was a little bitchy. She loved to lie, twist the truth, and make herself look good, but this was something else entirely. She was cheating on me with an undercover agent embedded in my activist organization. That's what I learned from the discovery materials during the trial I was representing myself in. Her affair was intertwined with her work, her lies, her deception. The worst part. The more I looked, the more I realized how deeply involved she was, not just with this guy but with everything that could tear my life apart. The organization I'd been fighting for, trying to defend our constitutional rights, was compromised because of her. She'd been sharing a safe house with this agent while I was out fighting for justice. I felt betrayed, not just as her husband but as someone who trusted her, believed in her. How could she do this? How could she lie so blatantly, knowing what was at stake? It was like everything I thought I knew about her was a lie, and now I was left with this gnawing sense of betrayal that cut so deep I didn't know how to breathe properly anymore. I spent the next few days in a fog. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time I closed my eyes I saw her with that guy, her smiling, her hand on his chest, the way she looked so at ease, so free from all the lies. I kept thinking about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd been lying to my face for months. It was like discovering a second life she'd been living right under my nose, a secret so well hidden I'd never suspected a thing. All the signs, the secretive calls, the late nights, the quick trips, now I knew what they really meant. I started digging into her phone, her emails, anything I could find. I wanted to know everything, how long she'd been doing this, who else was involved, what her game was. I found a string of messages with other people, not just Alex, but a whole network of contacts I didn't even know she had. She was a master at hiding her tracks, deleting things, covering her ass. But I was determined. I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after everything we'd built, not after all the promises she'd broken. One night I confronted her. It was the moment I'd been dreading but also knew I had to face. I sat her down in the living room, my heart pounding so hard I thought she'd hear it. I pulled out the phone, the receipts, the messages, and laid it all out for her. Her face twisted into that familiar bitchy sneer, and she started spouting off her usual lies. "Oh, come on, Steve," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting. It's just sex. It doesn't mean anything. You're always so paranoid, so controlling. I was just having some fun, a little distraction. You think I'd really cheat on you with some random guy? Please." Her tone was dismissive, like she didn't care about what I was feeling. but I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes, the way her lips pressed into a thin line. She kept lying, though, insisting that she'd only ever just flirted, that it was innocent, that I was imagining things. She called me possessive and jealous, said I was just insecure. That made me angrier, knowing she was spinning this story to protect herself. I told her I'd had enough, that I knew everything about the affair, about the safe house, the lies. I told her how her betrayal had shattered what I thought was a solid marriage, how she'd used my trust like a weapon. She shrugged, smirked even, and said, "You're overthinking it, Steve. You're just mad because I don't give you what you want. Maybe if you weren't so paranoid, you'd understand." That's when I saw the true face of her, bitchy, manipulative, and totally unrepentant. I realized then that she hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been lying to me for years. That night, I felt a mixture of heartbreak and rage. I was angry at her for lying, for betraying everything we'd shared, but I was also devastated because I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now, I didn't know what to feel anymore. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I hadn't seen through her bullshit, how I'd been so blind to the real her behind that bitchy exterior. I felt like a fool. I wondered if I'd ever truly know who she was, or if I'd been living with a lie all along. The pain was a weight pressing down on me, and I knew this was only the beginning of a long, complicated process I wasn't sure I was ready for. The days that followed were a blur. I kept replaying that confrontation over and over in my head, trying to find some clarity, some way to make sense of everything. Every time I thought I might have a moment of peace, something else would surface. Another message, another lie, another indication of how deep her deception ran. I started digging into her emails, her social media accounts, anything I could get my hands on. I wasn't going to let her slip away without knowing exactly what she'd been up to. What I uncovered was even more disturbing. She'd been working with this Alex guy, not just as lovers but as partners in this whole game. Evidence showed they'd been sharing a safe house, coordinating during protests I was organizing, passing information back and forth. It was like she'd been living a double life, one where she played the loyal wife to me, and another where she was embedded in a covert operation. I found chat logs where they discussed meeting up after my protest, sharing updates on my movements, even exchanging code words. All the while I thought she was just busy with her legal work. The worst part, the undercover agent, this guy Alex, was embedded in my activist organization. I'd trusted him and I'd trusted her. We had fought for the same cause, believed in the same fight for our rights. And she was using that trust against me. She'd been sharing intel with him, probably about my plans, my strategies, maybe even my legal defense. It was all so surreal, how she used my passion, our shared goals, as a cover for her betrayal. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. I started questioning everything. Was she truly that bitchy or just pretending? Was she always this manipulative or did I just never see it? I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. Every time I close my eyes, I see her with Alex, whispering, laughing, betraying everything I thought we had. I got angry at myself for being so naive, for trusting her so blindly. I kept thinking about the moments she'd lied to my face, saying she was working late, going to meetings, staying at the office, when in reality she was sharing a safe house with him, doing who knows what. And the thing that cut the deepest, the realization that her affair had compromised my entire defense. The legal protests I'd been fighting for, the constitutional rights I believed in, her betrayal had undermined it all. I felt like everything I'd stood for, everything I'd fought for, was now in jeopardy because of her lies. She'd put everything at risk just for some sex, some fleeting thrill with this agent. I wondered how many others she'd betrayed, how long this had been going on, and what kind of damage she'd really done. It was all so overwhelming and I didn't know how to process it. All I knew was I had to confront her again. I had to get some answers, no matter what it took. After all the digging, I knew I couldn't sit on this any longer. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that the betrayal ran deeper than I ever expected. I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted the truth, unfiltered and raw. I waited until she was home, which felt like waiting for a verdict in A trial, an inevitable showdown I couldn't avoid. When she walked through the door, her usual bitchy smirk was there, like she still thought she was untouchable. That's what annoyed me the most, her arrogance, her belief that she could lie her way out of everything. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I just laid everything out on the table, the messages, the receipts, the chat logs. Her face froze for a moment, then she blinked and started with her usual bullshit. "Steve," she said, rolling her eyes, "you're making a huge deal out of nothing. You're just jealous because I've been busy and you're paranoid as usual." She shrugged, acting like I was the crazy one, but I wasn't buying it. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that I knew about the safe house, about Alex, about everything. Her eyes flickered with something, maybe panic, maybe anger. She tried to deny it, to come up with more lies, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me," I said, voice low but furious. "I've seen the proof. You've been sneaking around, sharing a safe house during protests I organized, using my movement to hide your affair. How long has this been going on? Since when did you start lying to my face about everything?" She looked like she was about to explode, but she managed to keep her composure, at least outwardly. "Steve, you don't understand. It's not what you think. I was just—" She paused, exasperated. "I was just having sex with him. It doesn't mean I love him. It's just sex, okay? That's all it was." That was the moment I felt an icy chill run down my spine. Sex. Just sex. I looked her straight in the eyes, feeling the full weight of her words. How could she be so dismissive, so callous? She was cheating on me, betraying everything we'd built, and she reduced it to a meaningless fling. I mean, she was lying right to my face, trying to make me believe it was nothing. That's when the anger boiled over. I felt like I was going to explode. I told her that her sex with Alex had blown up my entire life, that she'd endangered my career, my reputation, everything I cared about. I told her I was done, done with her lies, her manipulation, her betrayal. I said I didn't know if I could ever trust her again, and honestly, I didn't want to. I'd been naive, thinking she was just a bitchy but loyal wife, but now I saw who she really was, a liar, a cheater, a manipulator. I told her I was leaving, that I needed to get away from her, from the lies, from the chaos she'd created. And her reaction, she just sneered, said, "Good. Do what you want. You're just insecure, Steve. You always overreact. You're just jealous because I'm still pretty and you're not. That's why you're so mad." It was like she didn't care at all, like she was happy to see me break, happy to see her get away with it. Her words stung worse than anything, and I realized then that she didn't see me as a partner, just some fool she could manipulate and discard. That night, I packed a bag, feeling hollow inside. I knew I had to leave, not just for my sanity, but to protect what was left of my dignity. As I drove away from that house, I looked back and thought about everything. Her lies, her betrayal, that safe house, her affair with Alex. I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak, knowing I'd never see her the same way again. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. All I could do now was try to move past it, even if the scars would stay with me forever. The days after I moved out were the hardest I've ever experienced. I kept circling back to the things I'd uncovered, the lies she told, and how deep her deception had gone. Honestly, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, emotionally, mentally, physically. I'd always believed in building something real, something solid. But now I saw that everything I thought was true was just a house of cards built on her lies. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to who she really was. I tried to focus on my work, on the causes I'd been fighting for, but it was almost impossible. Every protest, every legal battle I was involved in was tainted by her betrayal. I couldn't help but think about how she'd used our shared activism as a cover, how she'd shared secrets and plans with this agent Alex. It was like her betrayal was just limited to me, it was corrupting everything I stood for. My mind kept spinning with questions. Did she ever truly care about me? Was I just some pawn in her game? How many others had she lied to? The sense of loss and anger was overwhelming. I also had to decide what to do next. I knew I couldn't just pretend everything was okay. I reached out to a couple of friends I trusted, told them everything, and sought some advice. They were angry for me, furious that she'd betrayed us both, and they urged me to file for divorce. But part of me was still holding on to some hope, Hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd come clean, apologize, and we could somehow rebuild what was broken. Deep down, I knew that was a pipe dream. She'd lied so much, so convincingly, that I doubted she could ever be honest again. Meanwhile, I started collecting evidence. Not just for the divorce, but to protect myself legally and professionally. I knew that her affair, especially with someone embedded in my organization, could cause serious damage. I hired a private investigator to gather more solid proof, pictures, recordings, anything that could serve as evidence. If she tried to deny everything or spin some story to save face. I also contacted a lawyer, not just to handle the divorce but to understand if her actions could be used against her, especially considering her involvement with the agent and the safe house. The emotional toll was huge. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt all at once. I'd loved her, believed in us, believed she was loyal. But now I saw that her love was just a facade. She was a manipulator, a liar, a woman who used her charm and bitchy attitude to hide her true self. I started questioning everything I knew about her, about myself. Was I just an idiot for trusting her? Did I miss all the warning signs? Was I just blind because I wanted to believe in our marriage so badly? The questions haunted me, but I knew I had to move forward. I couldn't let her destroy me completely. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight to save a marriage built on such betrayal, but I would fight to protect myself and my reputation. I'd expose her if I had to, not just for justice but to keep her from hurting anyone else. I knew I'd be okay eventually, but it was going to take time to heal. The betrayal had cut so deep, and I was learning that sometimes the greatest act of strength is walking away from someone who no longer has your best interests at heart. I just hope I can find peace at the end of this mess. In the end, I decided to cut my losses. There was no salvaging what was already broken beyond repair. I filed for divorce, and honestly it was a relief more than anything else. Not because I'd won anything, but because I finally had clarity. The truth had come out, and while it hurt like hell, it also freed me from living in her shadow, from feeling like I was constantly walking on eggshells, questioning everything she said or did. Looking back, I realize how naive I was to believe that someone like Emily, so bitchy, so manipulative, could ever truly care about me. She used her charm, her lies, her ability to twist any story to her advantage. She lied to my face about everything, and I let her because I wanted to keep our marriage alive, wanted to see the good in her. But the truth was, she never cared about the vows or the life we built. She cared about her own secrets, her thrill, her betrayal, and she was willing to risk everything, including my trust, my reputation, and my work, for some fleeting sex with a guy embedded in my organization. I've learned a lot from this experience. Lessons about trust, about being more cautious with who I let into my life, and about the fact that sometimes love means knowing when to walk away. I've also learned that revenge isn't always about payback. Sometimes it's about reclaiming your life and dignity after someone has tried to destroy it. I didn't confront her to hurt her. I did it to finally see her for who she really was and to end the cycle of lies. Now I'm focusing on myself. I've started therapy, reconnected with friends, and I'm slowly rebuilding my sense of self. It hurts to know that I loved someone who turned out to be so different from what I thought, but I also understand that sometimes love isn't enough. People change, and some betrayals cut so deep that they leave scars you never fully heal. But I refuse to let her define me. For anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs just because you want things to work or because you believe in the best in people. Sometimes the truth is ugly and it hurts like hell, but facing it is the only way to truly move on. Be honest with yourself, protect your heart, and never forget, you deserve someone who values you enough to be honest, loyal, and decent. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most.